My boyfriend asked me in October why I still picked up when my mother called. I didn't have a good answer. I just said, "She's my mom." And he gave me that look, the one where he doesn't say anything because he knows I already know what he's thinking. His name is Finn. He's been watching my family treat me like a backup plan for 3 years now, and he's never once told me what to do about it. He just watches, and waits, and makes me coffee when I come home from visits looking like I've been wrung out. I'm a lab technician. I work in a diagnostic imaging clinic in Winnipeg, and I make decent money. Not flashy money, but honest money. My brother works in commercial real estate in Toronto, and my parents treat that like he invented fire. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every time we're all in the same room, the conversation eventually finds its way back to him. What he's closing. What neighborhood he's investing in. How well he's doing. I stopped waiting for them to ask about me somewhere around my 28th birthday. That was the year my mother forgot to order a cake, and my brother got a standing ovation at dinner for refinancing his condo. I'm 31 now. And last December, I finally understood something that I think I'd been too hopeful to see before. My grandmother lives about 40 minutes outside of Winnipeg, in a small house in the Interlake region near Lake Manitoba. She's been there since before I was born. She has a big vegetable garden in the summer, a wood stove she refuses to stop using, and a ceramic rooster collection that covers an entire shelf in her kitchen. Her name is Millicent. Everyone calls her Gran. She's 78. She's sharp, not in the aggressive way people say sharp when they mean someone is unpleasant. I mean, she reads 2 newspapers a day, does the crossword in pen, and remembers the middle names of every person she's ever met. She asks real questions. She waits for the actual answer. When I was little, I spent every summer at her house. My parents would drop us off for weeks at a time, my brother and me. And Gran would take us out in her truck to the lake, let us pick tomatoes in the garden, teach us card games on the porch after dinner. Those were the best summers I ever had. When I got older, the visits got shorter. My brother stopped going entirely once he hit his teens. But I kept going. Not out of obligation. I genuinely wanted to be there. We'd sit at her kitchen table and talk for hours. She'd tell me stories about growing up in rural Manitoba, about my grandfather's hardware business, about the years they scraped together to keep things running. She wasn't sentimental about it. She just told it straight. My parents always said Gran was fine. Self-sufficient. Didn't need much. Which was their way of saying they didn't need to think about her. The call came in late November. My mother's voice was warm in a way that made me cautious immediately. She has 2 registers, the flat one she uses when she's annoyed, and the warm one she uses when she needs something. I've learned to tell the difference, the way you learn to tell the difference between clouds. We're thinking of doing something special this Christmas, she said. The 4 of us, a proper family trip. Your uncle has a place in Kelowna now. He said we could use it over the holidays. That sounds nice, I said, carefully. We were hoping you'd look after Gran while we're away. Just a week. She shouldn't be alone out there in the winter. I held the phone against my ear and looked out my window at the snow already piling up against the fence. When did you decide this? I asked. Oh, we've been thinking about it for a while. It would just be so much easier knowing someone was with her. And you're so good with her, you 2 have always been close. What does my brother think? A pause. He's coming with us, obviously. He needs a break, he's been working so hard. I said I'd think about it. I got off the phone and sat in my kitchen for a long time. Finn came in from the living room and leaned against the counter. What was that about? I told him. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You don't have to. I know, I said. But the thing is, I wasn't even angry about Gran. I actually wanted to see her. It was the packaging. The way they'd wrapped it up like they were doing me a favor. Like spending Christmas with my grandmother. was a consolation prize they were generously offering me while they flew across the country to my uncle's lake house. I called Gran the next day, not to complain, just to talk. She said, "I heard you might be coming. Were you going to say something if I hadn't called?" She laughed. I was waiting to see how they'd handle it. I drove out to Gran's house on December 23rd. The highway was clear but cold. The fields on either side, flat and white, all the way to the horizon. I had a bag in the back seat and a box of groceries, and the kind of low-grade dread I always feel when my family makes a decision and I have to live inside it. Gran was at the door before I even got out of the car. She looked good. A little slower than the last time I'd seen her, maybe. She was using a cane now, which she hadn't been in the summer. But her eyes were the same, quick and steady, missing nothing. "You brought too much food," she said, looking at my box. "You always say that." And I'm always right. I laughed for the first time in a week. Inside, the house was exactly as I remembered. Warm from the wood stove, smelling like cedar and something baking. She had a small Christmas tree in the corner of the living room, with lights on it and a handful of ornaments I recognized from childhood. The ceramic roosters watched from the kitchen shelf. We made dinner together that night. She told me she'd been having some pain in her hip, hence the cane, and that her doctor had started her on a new anti-inflammatory. "Not a painkiller," she said pointedly. "An anti-inflammatory." She was very clear about the difference. "Your mother thinks I'm on heavy medication," Gran said, stirring something on the stove. "Are you?" "No." But she stopped asking after the first time I explained it, so I assume she's still operating on her original assumption. I set the table without saying anything. "She means well," Gran said. "I know. But meaning well and doing well are different things." I looked at her. She was still stirring, not looking at me. "Yes," I said. "They are." Christmas Eve was quiet in the way that good things are quiet. We watched an old film after dinner, something black and white that Gran had seen 30 times and still laughed at in the same places. I drank tea. She fell asleep in her chair around 9, and I covered her with the blanket from the couch and sat there a while longer in the warm room, listening to the wood stove and the wind outside. I thought about my family in Kelowna. I wondered if they were thinking about us. My phone had 2 texts. One daughter is from Finn, wishing me a good night. One from my mother, having a wonderful time. Hope Gran is doing well. I put my phone face down on the coffee table. On Christmas morning, Gran made pancakes with real maple syrup, the kind from Quebec, which she ordered by the case and considered a non-negotiable household staple. We opened small gifts at the kitchen table. I brought her a new bird feeder and a book about the Inner Lake region's natural history that I'd found at a used bookstore in Winnipeg. She'd knitted me a pair of socks in a dark green wool that she said matched my eyes. "I started them in September," she said. "I figured you'd end up here one way or another." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just put the socks on over my existing socks, which she found very funny. In the afternoon, we sat at the kitchen table and played cribbage. Gran is ruthless at cribbage. She counted her hand with the calm efficiency of someone who has never once miscounted a point in her life, and she beat me 4 times in a row without appearing to enjoy it any more than she would have enjoyed letting me win. "Can I ask you something?" I said after the 4th game. "You can ask me anything. Do you ever feel like—" I stopped. Tried again. "Do you feel like they forget about you?" "My parents. My brother." Gran set down her cards. She looked at me for a long moment. "I think," she said slowly, "that people show you who they are when they have choices. Your parents had a choice this Christmas. Your brother had a choice. You had a choice too." "I wanted to be here," I said. I'm not saying I didn't want to. I know you're not. She picked up her cards again. I've been watching all of you for 30 years. I know the difference between someone who visits because they want to and someone who visits because they feel they ought to. I won the next game. I think she let me. I'd been there 4 days when Gran asked me to help her get something from the closet in her bedroom, a box from the top shelf, too high for her to reach safely with the hip the way it was. It was a plain banker's box, sealed with tape. She set it on the bed and opened it carefully. Inside were papers. Legal documents mostly. A folder from a law firm in Winnipeg. Some correspondence I didn't read because she didn't offer them, and I didn't look. "I've been meaning to update some things," she said. "I have an appointment with my lawyer in the new year. I just wanted to make sure I could find everything. Do you need help organizing it?" "No. I just needed to know it was still here." She closed the box and looked at it for a moment. "Your grandfather built a very good business. We sold it in 2001. I've been managing the proceeds quietly ever since." I nodded. I knew about the hardware business. I'd heard the broad outlines. "I don't talk about money," she said. "Your grandfather didn't either. It wasn't how we were raised. But I want you to understand that I am not," she paused. "I am not a woman who needs to be managed, or forgotten about, or left with whoever is available." The room was very quiet. Outside the window, snow was sifting down through the gray afternoon light. "Gran," I said, "I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. You're here because you wanted to be here. I know that." She put her hand on top of the box. "I'm saying it because I want you to know that I see things clearly. I always have." I believed her completely. My family came back from Kelowna on December 30th. My mother called that evening while I was still at Gran's, packing up to leave the next morning. She sounded rested, cheerful, tan in her voice somehow. "How did it go? Was Gran all right?" "Gran is great," I said. "We had a really good week." "Wonderful. We'll have to come visit her in the spring. We've been saying that." "You have," I agreed. There was a pause. She caught something in my voice, I think. But she didn't press it. "We'll see you for New Year's?" "I'll see." I said goodnight and stood at Gran's kitchen window looking out at the dark yard. The bird feeder I'd hung on the second day that already had 3 chickadees coming to it regularly. Gran came and stood beside me. "You don't have to be angry on my behalf," she said. "I know. But you can be, if you need to." I leaned my head briefly against her shoulder, which I haven't done since I was about 10 years old. She didn't make it strange, she just stood there. "Thank you for having me," I said. "Thank you for coming," she said back. The call from Gran came in February. She said she'd had her appointment with her lawyer. She said there were some changes she'd wanted to make for a while, and she'd finally made them. She didn't tell me the specifics, and I didn't ask. Because it's not my business, and she has never been a woman who needed to explain herself to anyone. What she did say was this: "I want you to know that you are seen. One daughter as happens, you are seen." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. Finn asked me that evening what Gran had called about. "She updated her will," I said. "Oh." He was quiet. "Are you okay?" "I'm good," I said. And I meant it, not because of what she might have changed or what it might mean down the line. I'm not built that way. And honestly, that's not what mattered to me about that week. What mattered was the cribbage and the maple syrup and the ceramic roosters and the socks in dark green wool that she started knitting in September because she figured one way or another, I'd find my way to her. The spring visit my mother mentioned never happened. She brought it up twice, and both times something came up. My brother had something on. The timing was complicated. They'd plan it properly and do it right. Gran's garden came in beautifully that summer. I went out in July to help her stake the tomatoes. We were out there in the sun for most of the morning, and she told me about the first garden she and my grandfather had planted together, on a property they'd rented before they had anything to their name. Small plot, bad soil, two people who didn't entirely know what they were doing. We got 4 tomatoes, she said. We treated them like they were gold. I laughed. Did you eat them? Everyone. She patted the soil around the base of a plant, firm and practiced. That's the thing about tending to something. You have to show up, you can't just intend to. She wasn't talking about tomatoes, I know that now. I knew it then too, really. But sometimes someone who loves you says a true thing out loud, and you need to hear it in the open air before it fully lands. I'm not angry at my family. I've tried anger, and it doesn't suit me. It's too heavy to carry everywhere. What I have instead is a kind of clarity I didn't used to have. I know what I'm worth to them, and I know what I'm worth to Gran. And I know which version of being known I want to keep chasing. Gran called me last week. She wanted to know if Finn and I would come for Thanksgiving. She said she was planning to make her butter tarts, the ones with the slightly runny centers, which Finn declared the best thing he'd ever eaten, the first time he tried them. He's a good one, she said, about Finn. He is, I said. Hold on to that. I will, Gran. I will. I've thought a lot about what Gran said that afternoon in her bedroom, standing over that banker's box like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't ask for sympathy. She just said, plainly, that she is not a woman who needs to be managed, and she meant it in the deepest possible way, not as a complaint, but as a fact she'd spent 78 years quietly proving. That's the thing about people who actually have integrity. They don't announce it. They just live it, steadily, over decades, and eventually the record speaks for itself. I think about cause and effect a lot now, not in a mystical way. I just mean that the choices we make, even the small ones, tend to compound. My parents chose convenience every single time it was available to them. My brother chose to be wherever the attention was warmest. Neither of them did anything dramatic or villainous. They just consistently chose the easier thing, the more comfortable thing, the path that asked the least of them. And over 30 years, those choices added up into a portrait of who they are. Gran saw it clearly. I think she always had. I chose differently. Not because I'm especially virtuous. Honestly, I debated whether to go. I sat in my kitchen for a long time after that phone call, aware that I was being used as a logistical solution to a problem my family didn't want to solve themselves. But I went not because they deserved my cooperation, but because Gran deserved my company. That distinction matters. When you do the right thing for the right reason, it lands differently. In you and in the person receiving it. What I got from that week wasn't anything I could have predicted. I got cribbage games and maple syrup, and a pair of dark green wool socks and hours of conversation at a kitchen table with someone who knows how to actually listen. I got to watch chickadees at a feeder I hung myself. I got to be known, fully and without performance, by one of the sharpest people I've ever met. Finn asked me once if I resented my family for how that Christmas went. I had to think about it honestly. The answer is, not really. Resentment would require me to be surprised, and I wasn't. What I felt was more like a final settling. Like something I'd half known for years had finally come all the way into focus. Wisdom isn't something that arrives all at once. It accumulates slowly, through enough repeated experiences that you stop being able to pretend you don't see the pattern. That Christmas, I stopped pretending. I looked at my family clearly, and I looked at Gran clearly, and I understood where I actually belonged in each relationship. That's not a comfortable thing to know, but it's a true thing, and true things, even the hard ones, make better ground to stand on than comfortable illusions. Gran tended that garden every summer for decades. She showed up, year after year, whether it was easy or not. She built something real, with her husband, with her community, with the people who actually came when it mattered. And in the end, the thing she had to give, not just financially, but in terms of being truly seen and valued by her, went to the person who'd been showing up all along. That's not a punishment. It's just what happens when you pay attention over time. I'm still paying attention. I intend to keep doing that,